Right now, I mean, as we're speaking, billions of dollars are just sitting in the dark corners of the internet, completely asleep.
Yeah, totally dormant.
Right. Because we usually picture financial infrastructure as like a vault, a massive steel reinforced room where money just sits in the dark. It's heavy, it's static, and sure, it's secure.
Right, but it's not doing anything.
Exactly. And for a long time, traditional decentralized finance, or DeFi, hasn't been all that different from that vault.
Mhm.
You have these massive liquidity pools, and the capital inside them is essentially just taking a really long nap.
Yeah, it's what people call lazy money. I mean, it is the exact definition of it. In a traditional setup, you provide your capital, it gets locked into a smart contract, and it just, well, it does absolutely nothing but wait for a random trader to come
You're
along.
waiting for a swap to happen.
Right. You're waiting for someone to swap one token for another, and until that trade happens, your capital is totally stagnant.
But what if a token's liquidity structure wasn't just a static vault? Like, what if instead it was this kinetic, highly calibrated engine?
Which is a huge paradigm shift.
It is. And that is exactly the mission of our deep dive today. We are talking about an automated machine that constantly harvests external yield, right? And then it uses that yield to relentlessly buy back its own supply. So today we are looking at the Vortex Protocol, or VRTX.
Yeah, VRTX.
And we're pulling insights from this really interesting breakdown by Normie Crypto alongside Vortex's own live spec data.
Which is super detailed. But before we get into the gears of this engine, we should probably establish that we are dissecting this architecture purely for educational purposes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, as the Normie Crypto source emphasizes pretty heavily throughout their breakdown, we're just unpacking the mechanics here. This is not financial or investment advice. The goal is just to understand the engineering behind it.
100%. Because whether you are a seasoned crypto veteran who, lives in the trenches of DeFi, or you're someone just trying to navigate the blockchain space without getting a massive headache, the concept of lazy money versus working money is universal.
It really is.
Right. I mean, it's a financial reality that applies to your checking account just as much as it applies to Web3.
Exactly. And to understand how Vortex puts this money to work, we kind of have to look at how they shattered the traditional baseline first.
The giant pool.
Right, the giant pool. That's the standard model for decentralized liquidity, specifically an automated market maker, or AMM.
Which is everywhere in DeFi.
It is.
Yeah,
And if you aren't familiar with it, think of an AMM like a giant mindless vending machine. You basically dump half of your token supply and half of a stable coin, like USDC, into this machine.
Just a big bucket of tokens.
Yeah, a massive bucket. And the machine just uses a mathematical formula to balance the two sides whenever someone makes a trade.
Okay, let's unpack this, because Vortex doesn't use the giant vending machine model at all.
Not at all.
They took their entire supply, which is exactly 1 million VRTX tokens, by the way, and instead of dumping it into a massive unorganized pool, they built a staircase.
A staircase is a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I like to visualize it as a ladder, like a 100-rung ladder, because they distributed the tokens across 100 protocol-owned liquidity bands.
Right. That visual captures the geometry perfectly. It's a programmed price ladder. So instead of one infinite continuous curve, the liquidity is compartmentalized into very specific price zones.
And imagine the bottom rungs of this ladder, right? They're packed incredibly tightly with tokens, like they are dense, almost overflowing.
Yeah, super concentrated.
But as you climb higher up the ladder, the tokens get spread much further apart.
And what's fascinating here is the deliberate nature of that compression, because it's a highly engineered curve divided into phases.
Right, like phase one.
Exactly. Phase 1, which they call discovery. This covers the very first 11 bands, so band 0 through band 10. And this section is intensely VRTX dense.
Intensely is an understatement.
Yeah, out of the 1 mil in total supply, exactly 817,349 VRTX is squeezed into just these first 11 bands.
I mean, that is wild. Over 81.7% of the entire token supply is stuffed into the very beginning of the curve.
Yep. And each of these early bands has a set width of 15,000 USDC. So the total depth for this entire first phase is 165,000 USDC.
Okay, so what's the point of doing that?
The goal here is to facilitate early market discovery. By concentrating the supply early on, the protocol creates frequent transitions. It doesn't take massive amounts of capital to push the price from one band to the next.
So it gets the gears turning quickly.
Exactly. It gets the system moving.
But wait, I have to push back on that a little bit. If 81% of the total supply is just sitting right there at the very beginning of the ladder,
Yeah.
what is stopping a whale, like a really wealthy buyer,
Yeah.
from swooping in, dropping a massive bag of USDC, and just buying up the entire protocol instantly.
Right, sweeping the floor.
Yeah. Or even worse, someone writing a bot to just execute 100 trades in a millisecond to buy it all up.
Well, that is definitely the most critical vulnerability with a dense early structure. But the spec data outlines a specific defense mechanism to prevent that exact outcome. Yeah. While the current band is below number 5, there is a hard-coded maximum transaction limit of 10,000 VRTX per swap.
Oh, okay, which is exactly 1% of the total supply.
Right.
But wait, couldn't a bot just spam that 1% buy order? Like over and over?
Well, no, because the smart contracts enforce block-level limitations and strict parameters on how those transactions process. So a whale or a bot simply cannot swallow the protocol in one bite.
They have to chew it slowly.
Exactly. The system forces them to step through the mechanism incrementally. And as the market moves past this discovery phase into the later bands, the structure fundamentally shifts.
Because it's not dense anymore.
Right. The VRTX density drops and the USDC depth widens into what they call a scarcity tail.
Meaning, as the price goes up, there are fewer and fewer VRTX tokens available on that specific rung of the ladder, but it takes way more USDC to climb to the next one.
Precisely. The architecture transitions from a compressed supply phase into an expansion phase. It essentially forces the market to prove how badly it wants the token. Because there are fewer tokens available per band and the USDC width required to clear the band increases, it demands much deeper, more sustained buying pressure to move through each price zone.
Okay, so we have this 100-rung ladder. We know how the tokens are stair-stepped, getting aggressively scarcer as we climb. But the real question for you listening is, what actually happens to the USDC that buyers are trading in exchange for that VRTX?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Right. As we climb this ladder, where does the money go?
And this is where the giant pool model really gets left behind, because in a standard AMM, that USDC would just sit in the pool, doing nothing.
Lazy money.
Exactly. But in Vortex, when a trade pushes the price up and crosses one of these liquidity bands, the liquidity is locked in as USDC reserves by something called a Uniswap V4 hook.
Whoa, hold on. A hook. I'm picturing like a literal pirate hook reaching in and grabbing the money. For those of us who don't read smart contract code for fun, what is a Uniswap V4 hook actually doing?
Fair question. Think of a hook like a highly programmable bouncer at a club.
Okay, a bouncer.
Right. Crossed with a toll booth operator. In older versions of Uniswap, trades just happened based on a fixed set of rules. You couldn't easily intervene in the middle of a transaction.
It was just a straight swap.
Exactly. But V4 hooks allowed developers to inject custom logic right at the exact moment a trade happens. So when the price crosses a band, this bouncer steps in, grabs the USDC that was just traded, and secures it as official protocol reserves.
Here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Because you can think of what happens next, like your own personal finance setup.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, like if you get a bonus at work, you wouldn't take 100% of that paycheck and immediately lock it up in a 10-year treasury bond where you can't touch it.
No, you'd be stuck if your car broke down.
Exactly. You keep a buffer in your checking account for daily expenses or sudden emergencies, and then you put the rest of the money to work.
And that analogy perfectly mirrors what Vortex calls the reserve life cycle.
The reserve life cycle.
Right. When a band is crossed, the bouncer doesn't immediately send all that USDC away to a far-off locked investment. The nearest crossed band stays highly liquid. It sits in a state called warm reserve standby.
Your checking account.
Precisely. It acts as a fast recall buffer. Because, financial markets do not move in a straight line. They go up, but they also retrace.
Right, they bounce around.
Yeah. And if the token price falls backward, these warm reserves are sitting right there, immediately available to restore the band. The critical innovation here is the lack of friction.
Because it's automatic.
Exactly. There is zero lag and no human governance required. You don't have to wait for a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, to hold a 48-hour vote to release funds. The protocol just smoothly steps backward down the ladder, utilizing that warm buffer instantly.
Wow. Okay, so it's instantaneous safety. But keeping everything in a checking account is still lazy money. What about the older reserves? The money on the rungs of the ladder that are safely further away from the current price action?
Well, those older reserves are shifted out of the warm buffer. They get upgraded into what they call productive status.
Productive.
Yeah. Instead of sitting dormant, this USDC is split up and actively deployed into yield-bearing strategies across DeFi.
So the vault actually transforms into an engine.
Exactly.
And looking at the live flow data from the spec, we can see exactly where this productive USDC is being sent right now. A portion of these productive reserves is supplied to Aave lending markets.
Right, Aave.
And Aave is essentially a massive decentralized bank. Right now, the live flow shows that the productive reserve yield on Aave is sitting at a 3.3% APY.
Which is solid. And we should probably clarify how that yield is generated, because it isn't magic.
It's not just printed out of nowhere.
Right. On Aave, other crypto users are depositing volatile assets like Ethereum or Bitcoin as collateral so they can borrow stablecoins like USDC, and they pay an interest rate for that privilege.
Makes sense.
So Vortex is basically supplying its idle USDC to those borrowers, and in return, the protocol captures that interest.
And that's just one side of the split strategy.
Oh, right, Ethena.
Yeah. The protocol's treasury takes another portion of the older reserves and routes it through Ethena. It converts the USDC to USDD and then stakes it as USDD to capture staking yields. And the current live flow shows the Ethena APY is 3.537%.
Yeah, and Ethena operates on a totally different mechanic than Ethereum. It creates a synthetic dollar USDD by using complex delta-neutral strategies.
Delta-neutral?
Yeah. Essentially, they capture the baseline network rewards of staking Ethereum combined with the funding rates from derivative markets. I mean, it's an intricate institutional grade strategy.
So super complicated.
It is. But Vortex abstracts all of that away. The protocol simply plugs its reserves in and reaps the 3.5% yield. So you have the warm reserve catching immediate price fluctuations and the older reserves actively earning real, mathematically backed interest across two completely different platforms.
Okay, so the protocol has successfully secured its warm checking account buffer. It's actively earning 3.3% from borrowers on Ethena, and it's earning 3.5% from complex staking on Ethena.
Right.
But where does that interest actually go? Because, I mean, in the traditional finance world, if a bank lends out your deposits, the yield goes to the CEO's bonus package, right?
Yeah.
Or it gets paid out as dividends to a corporate board.
Yeah, usually. But in Vortex, every single cent of that harvested yield feeds directly into a deflationary feedback loop.
The deflationary loop.
Yeah. The protocol takes the interest, it earns the actual revenue generated from those Aave borrowers and the Ethena staking rewards, and uses it to automatically buy VRTX on the open market.
Oh, wow.
And once it buys it, it permanently burns it.
Burns it, like destroys it.
Yes. It destroys those tokens, completely removing them from the circulating supply.
But wait, isn't this just a snake eating its own tail? Like, it sounds like an artificial way to pump the price. If the protocol is just buying its own token, why is this structurally sound from an economic standpoint?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the exact opposite of an artificial pump.
Really? How so?
Because it relies on external value capture. Artificial pumps rely on printing new tokens out of thin air to incentivize users. Vortex is taking value generated completely outside of its own ecosystem, like the entity paid by random borrowers on Aave, and trapping that value inside the protocol.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it is using external capital to relentlessly shrink its own supply. It's not printing money, it's capturing it.
Capturing it. Okay, so what does this all mean for the actual day-to-day operation? Like, let's look at the math and the live burn thresholds required to trigger this event.
Well, because it doesn't happen constantly.
Exactly. The system doesn't just execute a market buy for a fraction of a penny every single second. There are set triggers.
Yeah.
So for the Aave yield, the threshold is $1,000. For Ethena, the threshold is $500.
Yeah, the protocol is programmed to wait until it has gathered a meaningful amount of capital before executing a market buy, which optimizes transaction costs and, creates more impactful supply shocks.
And looking at the live flow, as of right now, there is 43.9555 cents sitting in the Aave burn queue and 7.275 cents sitting in the Ethena queue.
Right.
Which means, practically speaking, 0 VRTX has been burned so far. The thresholds simply haven't been met yet.
True, but we have to view this on a timeline. Let's look at the projected math for Phase 1.
Okay, let's do it.
When Phase 1, the discovery phase with those dense early bands, when that completes, the VRTX price hits a structural checkpoint of approximately $1.29.
Just to be precise, the spec lists the phase-end price at exactly 1.298442, with a fully diluted valuation of roughly $1.29 million.
Perfect. So at that specific checkpoint, excluding the nearest warm band, there will be approximately 150,000 USDC fully deployed to Aave.
Okay.
Now, if we assume a conservative 5% APY on Aave at that time, we can calculate the exact burn cadence. It will take an estimated 48.7 days for that deployed 150,000 USDC to generate the $1,000 in yield revenue needed to trigger a single Aave burn.
Wait, 48.7 days, so roughly a month and a half to see the first major deflationary event from Aave.
Early on, yes. But the brilliance of this design is the compounding flywheel effect.
The flywheel.
Yeah. Every time a burn happens, the total supply shrinks, making the remaining tokens slightly scarcer. But more importantly, every time the price climbs a new band, more USDC gets locked in and deployed into those productive strategies.
So the principal balance grows.
Exactly. As volume and price action move the protocol through its bands, the system commands more capital, generating more yield, and relentlessly reducing the available token supply at an accelerating rate.
It's an engine that literally buys and consumes its own parts to make the remaining parts more valuable. That is wild.
It's a very elegant mechanism.
So we've mapped out the complex gears of this machine. We've got the dense discovery bands, the warm buffers keeping things safe, the dual yield farming, and the automated buybacks. But how does this intricate engineering actually change the day-to-day experience for you, the listener, who is just trying to navigate the crypto space without making it a full-time job?
Yeah, that's the real takeaway here. Because this architecture represents a monumental shift from static finance to what the source breakdown calls kinetic finance.
Kinetic finance.
Yes. For the end user who is accustomed to standard liquidity pools, this removes the entire burden of active management.
I mean, that is massive. Because usually if you want yield in DeFi, it is exhausting.
Oh, it requires constant vigilance. Usually you have to manually stake your tokens. You have to monitor your yield positions to make sure you aren't getting liquidated. You have to worry about impermanent loss.
Impermanent loss. And for someone who doesn't spend all day in the crypto trenches, impermanent loss is essentially the risk that the tokens you deposited change in price so drastically that you actually end up with less value than if you had just kept them in your wallet.
Right. That is the silent killer in traditional liquidity pools. Not to mention the gas fees.
Oh man, the gas fees.
Yeah. You have to actively decide when to harvest your rewards, and you have to pay a network transaction fee, a gas fee, every single time you do it.
The gas fees alone eat up most of the profits for regular users.
Right.
I mean, if you were earning $10 in yield, but it cost you $15 in gas to claim it, you are literally paying to lose money.
Exactly. But with Vortex, the protocol's own gears handle the yield harvesting, the reinvestment, and the deflationary mechanics entirely behind the scenes.
It's totally passive.
Totally passive. The user just holds the token, the protocol itself absorbs the gas costs, and executes all the complex operations.
Which brings me back to the source of this breakdown, normiecrypto.com.
Oh yeah, their site.
If you go to their site, it is a trip. I mean, they sell a medium roast, broken top coffee blend.
Coffee.
Yeah. And they sell color morphing coffee mugs that loudly proclaim, always HODL, never panic. They even have a crypto rocket graphic tank top. It's like a gift shop for Web3 culture.
It is a very distinct, unapologetic aesthetic.
It really is.
Yeah.
But the whole point of a site like that is approachability.
Yeah.
It's trying to translate notoriously complex blockchain concepts into plain English for everyday people.
Right, the normies.
Exactly. And Vortex completely aligns with that normie ethos because it takes incredibly advanced, multi-layered DeFi strategies like Aave lending markets, delta-neutral Ethena staking, programmable Uniswap v4 hooks, and it makes the benefits completely passive for the end user.
They don't have to manage any of it.
Right. You don't have to understand how a synthetic dollar captures a funding rate. You just know the engine is working in the background. Every single transition in market price automatically benefits the health and scarcity of the entire ecosystem.
And, you know, this raises an important question for the broader financial landscape.
Oh, like what?
Well, by programming liquidity to essentially move based on price action protecting itself when it falls and investing itself when it climbs, this model ensures that capital is always being optimized.
Right.
It forces us to look backward and question why we ever accepted idle capital in the first place. Like, why were we okay with billions of dollars just sleeping in a static vault waiting for a trade?
Because we didn't have the architecture to build the engine yet.
Fair point.
So let's recap this journey. Vortex is fundamentally rewriting the playbook on decentralized liquidity. They take the static, lazy money of traditional giant pools, and they divide it up across a highly structured staircase of 100 programmed bands.
Yep.
They compress the early bands to make market discovery easy and widen the later bands to force scarcity.
And they utilize a sophisticated reserve lifecycle. keeping the closest funds in a warm standby buffer for immediate frictionless safety if the price drops, while sending the older, safer reserves out to work.
Right. They put those older reserves on the clock, deploying them into Aave and Ethena to earn continuous real-world interest from borrowers and silky networks.
Exactly.
And finally, they take the paychecks from those investments, pool them up to specific thresholds like $1,000 or $500, and use that cash to buy back and burn their own token, creating this permanent, relentless deflationary loop.
All of it happening automatically, behind the scenes, governed entirely by code. It turns the user experience from an active, expensive, stressful chore into a kinetic, entirely passive benefit.
It's brilliant engineering. So to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day, think back to that image of the static vault versus the kinetic engine. We've talked about how this benefits the everyday user.
Right.
But what happens when traditional high-frequency algorithmic trading firms or even autonomous AI agents discover these on-chain structures?
Oh, wow.
I mean, if an AI realizes it can plug into a self-sustaining kinetic pool that automatically optimizes its own yield and manages its own risk better than a human hedge fund manager ever could, are these protocols going to remain tools for everyday investors? Or are we watching the blueprints for the exact engines that Wall Street and artificial intelligence will eventually weaponize to swallow the decentralized market entirely?